Hi Year 10 and welcome back for Poetry Shop 5. Today we're going to be looking at The Charge of the Light Brigade by Alfred Lord Tennyson. I'm sure it's a firm favourite for some of you. Personally not for me, but I'm going to attempt to be as energetic and lively about this one as I would be for a poem that I adore. So let's start with this poem, The Charge of the Light Brigade. Half a league, half a league, half a league onward, all in the valley of death rode the 600. Forward, the Light Brigade! Charge for the guns, he said. Into the valley of death rode the 600. Forward, the Light Brigade! Was there a man dismayed? Not though the soldier knew. Someone had blundered. Theirs not to make reply, theirs not to reason why, theirs but to do and die. Into the valley of death rode the 600. Cannon to right of them, cannon to left of them, cannon in front of them, volleyed and thundered, stormed at with shot and shell, boldly they rode and well into the jaws of death, into the mouth of hell rode the 600. Flashed all their sabres bare, flashed as they turned in air, sabring the gunners there, charging an army while all the world wondered, plunged in the battery smoke, right through the line they broke, Cossack and Russian reeled from the sabre stroke, shattered and sundered. Then they rode back, but not the 600. Cannon to right of them, cannon to left of them, cannon behind them, volleyed and thundered, stormed at with shot and shell, while horse and hero fell. They that had fought so well came through the jaws of death, back from the mouth of hell. All that was left of them, left of 600. When can their glory fade? Oh, the wild charge they made! All the world wondered. Honour the charge they made. Honour the Light Brigade. Noble 600. There it is. And so this week, for looking at the title, there's only one word I want to focus on because this is quite a self-explanatory title. And I want us to focus on this description here, charge, okay? So the charge of the Light Brigade. Now, the charge is obviously referring to an act of battle. So it's a going forwards. And that's something that we can look at in context and what the poem is about. I'm going to do both of those together today. I want to first of all mention that this is a poem that relates to an event in the Crimean War, and that was fought between Britain and what was then Imperial Russia, and that was about 1853, I think, and ended in 1856. You may have to check that with Mr. Modica, but I'm pretty certain I'm right there. For the first time in history with this particular war, newspapers were not really hiding the truth. What they were actually doing is they were carrying eyewitness reports, and they were detailing not just the triumphs of war, but also the mistakes and the horrors of it as well. So it was like a movement towards a free press. So people back at home who weren't on the front line were getting a much truer picture of the events that were occurring for the brave soldiers that were fighting for our country. The poem itself then refers to one of the specific battles, a very famous one of this particular war, and it was a really significant moment because there was an event called the Battle of Balaclava. And what happened here, it was a battle that the Light Brigade were involved in, and there was an order that was given to the Army's cavalry division. That is the Light Brigade. So these are soldiers that are on horseback. And what happened is that an order was misunderstood, and somewhere down the line communication went wrong, and 600 cavalrymen therefore ended up charging down a narrow valley, you know, the Valley of Death, straight into the fire of the Russian cannons. It was like a death mission. So out of those 600, over 150 men were killed and more than 120 were wounded. So that's a really significant number, isn't it? And at home, the news of the disaster was really sensational. And us as a nation, you know, we generally really embraced and celebrated British military exploits abroad. We started then to question the politicians and the generals who led them. How dare people in power push others forward to die? So you can start to see glimmers of that within this poem. However, there is a flip side, of course, because we can see that the poem is a little bit more concerned than the newspapers were with presenting the negative consequences. This poem has a lot to do with creating what I would say national heroes for this country, rather than mourning the dead soldiers or arguing against the war. So what Tennyson is doing here is he's talking about bravery and honour, and he talks about the sacrifices that they have made and the love of one's country. But then there is also that little essence coming in about the horror of the slaughter. However, I do feel that he does want their sacrifice to be remembered, and it is really a celebration of absolute sheer bravery and doing what you're told, even though you know that perhaps it's wrong. The language of this poem is really interesting, and there's so much military language going on here. And so we can think about that lexical field of the military, or in posh terms, militaristic lexis. The words that form this pattern are words like gun, soldiers, cannons, sabres, and gunners. It all really sets the scene. It places us very convincingly at the heart of a battle. And the power of this poem really comes from the careful use of imagery. There's so much imagery going on. Last week I was talking about how stark the Duke's language was in My Last Duchess, but in this one we do actually see that there's lots of imagery and sound devices being used as well. I love the sound in this actually. There's the language of heroism as well, and we see lovely descriptions here, boldly, you know, we've got that modifier being used there. So if you're boldly charging, you've got that nice adverb-verb combination, and it's showing that you have real bravery. We've also got very violent language, which shows a true reflection of the conditions that people were facing. So words like shattered and thundered. The word thundered is one of those sound devices. It's almost the sound of the horse's hooves on the battlefield. We can really think about that. So the type of sound device that we've got is, of course, onomatopoeia. We can really see that going on, but the pace of the poem as well, which I'll talk about in a sec, also contributes to that too. We see that verbs are used very powerfully too to pace the action within this piece. The verbs are very racy and pacey. They really start to show us that this was an absolute fight for one's life. Things were moving very quickly. We think about stormed, volleyed. There's movement, there's energy, there's life. It's absolutely electric and explosive what's going on. We've also got something that could be connected to context as well, thinking about ideas of religion and thinking about ideas of sacrifice for religion too. And there's a really strong image of the Valley of Death, and that's in lines 3, 7 and 16 within the text. And this is referencing a very well-known psalm within the Bible. And often at funerals and things, you've got this sense of going, I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. That's also, you know, something that I've heard Eminem use as well in one of his raps. And when you consider this, it's important. It's a biblical reference, and it's not only showing you how important Tennyson views this event, because he's putting it on a parallel with a biblical story, if you like, but it's also showing a sense of inevitability, that these men were going into their death, because if you're riding into the valley of the shadow of death, you can very much see that you're unlikely to come back. So there is a sense of that that's so evident. We've got this huge amount of alliteration that comes through as well. So it's not just onomatopoeia that is a sound device. Alliteration really does show us the sounds of battle. It makes us really immersed in it. We're convincingly placed on the battlefield with the Light Brigade. And so we've got words like shot and shell. Woo, that sibilant S sound is almost like the sound of shells ripping through the air. Do think about that. It's very, very consciously crafted to immerse you in that, to make it credible. We have to really almost see it and hear it to believe it. The last stanza begins with this rhetorical question, and it really challenges the reader. When can their glory fade? Well, surely Tennyson is showing us that's a no-brainer. It can't fade. How could we not admire the bravery of these men? How could we bear to ever forget the sacrifice that they made, knowing that certain death was almost there for them, but they still went ahead anyway? When we think about the structure and form of the poem, we've got to consider the rhythm. It is amazing. It's very, very strong. Half a league, half a league. What we've got here is two light beats followed by the heavy beat. And this is almost, if any of you are into horses and things like that, it is almost the sound of a horse galloping, again reflecting that these were cavalrymen. They are actually in physical conflict. So that is how we're seeing that this links into the cluster. We are looking at how conflict affects individuals and perhaps how those who are in positions of power, send people to their death. There are 6 stanzas, and this is a little bit speculative. I'm not entirely convinced by this idea, okay? Because there are 6 stanzas, there is a sense that some people would say that each stanza is like a memorial stone to 100 of the 600 cavalrymen. I really don't know if I'm holding with that, but it's something that's out there, and it could be something that your teachers may have discussed with you. The length of the stanzas also reflect the structure of the story. So again, when we talk about snapshots, this is kind of like, what is going on? So we've got this sort of instruction that's being given in the early parts of the poem. And then as they move into the battlefield, we start to see stanzas that are snapshots of those moments too. So just to expand upon that, in the first 3 stanzas, the Light Brigade is approaching the guns. So there is a strong sort of pattern here. We've got 3 lines, each of which there's 3 6 to 7 syllables, and they're followed by the shorter line, which is 5 syllables, rode the 600. So this pattern suggests the really strong formation in which the cavalry charge. So they didn't just sort of like kick on with their horses and go for it. There was definitely a pattern. There was a strategy of war that they were following. Stanza 2 is interesting, okay? It's where the men start to go forward and we start to see the men making best of their struggle. We know that someone had blundered, but they don't complain. Theirs not to make reply, theirs not to reason why. I'm going to just point this bit out. It's a little bit language based actually. Perhaps I should have mentioned it a moment ago. But when we think about that, it links to these ideas of power, doesn't it? Because these men don't actually have the right to challenge what they're doing. Remember, if a soldier at this time, perhaps even today, I'm not really sure how the military works, but back in those days, if you failed to follow orders, you would be killed for treason. And so that's something to consider too. Stanza 6 is a very short and sharp conclusion, and it's written as if these were the lines that we should have in our minds to remember the Light Brigade by. They are noble words, and Tennyson very clearly wants us to remember these guys in this way. So this is the first real poem that we've got that depicts actual conflict, okay? You again will have millions of annotations within your anthologies, and you can cross-reference between the things that I've said. They're just little glimmers, chicken nuggets if you like, with hopefully a nice serving of sauce on the side for you, of ideas that you can just get your teeth into. So good luck with this one, guys. Spend a couple of minutes now thinking about which texts you might be comparing this with, and hopefully connecting it to ideas of power and conflict. I will speak to you again next week. You take care of yourselves, and I will speak to you soon. Bye now.